I lowered myself carefully into the kitchen chair, trying not to let the movement send another jolt of pain through my arm. The cast was new, still stiff and unfamiliar, and the bruises peeking from beneath it looked even darker under the morning light. Every small shift sent a dull ache crawling up to my shoulder, but I forced my face to stay calm. I didn't want to make things harder for my daughter. Lily sat across the table, hands wrapped around a mug she wasn't drinking from. She kept tracing the rim with her thumb, her eyes flicking from the cast to my face and back again. Her expression was a strange mix, anger tightening her jaw, guilt softening her gaze, fear lingering underneath it all. She looked as though she hadn't slept. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence between us. I tried for a smile, something reassuring, something motherly. "It's just a fracture," I said gently. "These things heal." But the moment I spoke, Lily swallowed hard, blinked rapidly, and the words burst out of her in a strained whisper. "My husband taught her a lesson." I froze, the air in the room suddenly heavier. "Taught who?" I asked, though a terrible suspicion was already forming. Lily didn't answer. She only pressed her lips together and looked down at her shaking hands. The quiet wrapped around us again, thick and uncomfortable. It wasn't just the broken arm. It was the truth she was building up the courage to tell me, something that went far beyond the injury I carried home. And as I waited, I realized this morning was only the beginning of a story I had never expected to be part of. 2 days earlier, the air in Lily's house felt unusually tense the moment I stepped inside. She had called me in a shaky voice, asking if I could come help with the baby because she wasn't feeling well. Her words were vague, but something in her tone told me she didn't want to explain over the phone. I didn't push. She was my daughter, and I came immediately. When I walked into the living room, I didn't find Lily with the baby. Instead, I found Paula, her mother-in-law, pacing back and forth like a storm barely holding itself together. She was muttering under her breath, sharp little insults dripping from her tongue like venom. She stopped only long enough to flash me a cold, assessing look, the kind that always made me feel like I'd trespassed on some invisible line. "Of course you came," she sneered as if my presence offended her. "Always meddling, always making her depend on you." I stiffened. Paula's hostility wasn't new, but today it felt amplified, more pointed, more personal. Before I could respond, the baby began to cry from the bedroom, and instinctively, I headed toward the sound. Lily appeared in the hallway, pale and exhausted, whispering, "Mom, thank you," as she passed the baby into my arms. That simple act ignited something in Paula. She snapped, "Give him back! She'll never learn to be strong if you keep running here." Her voice rose with each word, echoing off the walls. Lily tried to calm her, hands trembling, but Paula shoved her aside with surprising force. Then her glare landed on me, blazing, irrational, unhinged. "Get out of my son's house!" she shouted. The shove she gave me came without warning, hard, violent, fueled by something far deeper than a moment of anger. I stumbled backward, lost my footing, and crashed against the edge of the marble counter. A sickening crack echoed in my ears, followed by a bolt of pain so sharp it stole my breath. The world blurred for a moment. Lily screamed. Paula froze, just for a second. And that second was enough to change everything. The second Mark walked in, the room seemed to contract. I was cradling my arm, grimacing as waves of pain shot through my shoulder, and Lily was trembling beside me. For a moment, Mark simply froze, his eyes widening as he took in the scene. Me, bruised and in pain, and his mother standing there, her chest heaving with fury. Something darkened in his gaze, something I had rarely, if ever, seen. Mark had always been calm, measured, the kind of man who avoided conflict at all costs. But now, the calm was gone, replaced by a quiet intensity that made Paula falter. "Mom?" he said, his voice low but firm, every syllable carrying weight. "You've crossed every line." Paula rolled her eyes, dismissing him with a flick of her hand. Oh, please, she snapped. She fell on her own. You always take her side. Mark didn't flinch. He stepped closer, placing himself between us. His eyes locked on hers, steady, unwavering. I don't care what you think. Get out. Her lips curled in mockery, but Mark's tone didn't waver. He repeated it louder this time. Now, leave, or you'll never see your grandson again. For a heartbeat, the air was charged with tension so thick it felt like it could choke us all. Paula's defiance wavered, and then she stormed toward the door, hurling threats over her shoulder. But Mark followed her, shutting the door firmly behind them. The click of the lock was final, leaving a silence so heavy it pressed against my ribs. Lily sank into a chair, her face buried in her hands. I didn't know he would do it, she whispered, voice cracking. I reached over and held her shoulder. He did what he had to do. Sometimes the hardest thing is also the right thing. For the first time since the push, I felt a sliver of relief. Mark had drawn a line, and Paula had finally been forced to recognize it. Now, back at the kitchen table, the morning light filtering through the blinds, I watched Lily carefully, still holding my tea even though it had gone lukewarm. Her fingers twisted the handle nervously, and her eyes avoided mine. After a long pause, she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Mom, Mark, he told her. He told her if she ever touched you again, she'd never see the baby. He made her leave, Lily said, her words tumbling out in a rush, as if afraid to pause. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. The next morning, when she tried to come back, he told her the same thing. He said she needed help, and that she wasn't allowed near you. I set my tea down, leaning back slightly, feeling a mixture of relief and disbelief. The story she was telling made my heart pound, not just because of what had happened, but because of what it revealed. For years, Paula had held power over everyone, her intimidation unchallenged. But now, Mark had taken a stand. Lily's voice shook. I should have protected you better, she admitted, shame washing over her face. I should have done more. I reached across the table, placing my uninjured hand over hers. You did protect me, Lily, by raising a husband who knew right from wrong. That's more than I could have asked for, I said gently, squeezing her hand. For a moment, we just sat there, the silence now comforting rather than tense. The weight of years of manipulation and fear was beginning to lift, and for the first time since the incident, I felt safe. Lily looked at me, searching my eyes. I never thought someone would finally stop her, she whispered, a tremor of awe and gratitude in her tone. And in that moment, I realized that sometimes protection comes not from intervention or confrontation, but from someone who refuses to let injustice continue. The doorbell rang, and Lily's shoulders tensed as she glanced at me. It's not her, she said quickly, a hint of relief in her voice. It's Mark. Mark walked in, carrying a bag of groceries, his calm presence filling the room. He smiled at me, not the casual smile he often gave, but one weighted with reassurance. How's the arm? He asked gently, setting the bag down on the counter. I waved a hand weakly, wincing as pain shot through my shoulder. Lily sat beside me, her hand slipping into mine, warm and steady. He meant what he said, Mom, she whispered. She won't hurt you again. Mark unpacked the groceries, humming softly as he did. There was a sense of normalcy in his actions, a quiet declaration that life could continue, even after chaos. I watched him move around the kitchen, chopping vegetables, setting up ingredients for dinner. His attentiveness was more than routine. It was protection, it was care, it was a promise that the household had a boundary no one could cross. Lily leaned closer, resting her head briefly on my shoulder. It's finally over, she said softly. We're safe now. He made sure of it. For the first time in days, I allowed myself to relax. The pain in my arm remained, but the weight on my chest had lifted. A broken arm had exposed a broken pattern of fear and control, and for the first time, someone strong enough had intervened to set things right. Dinner would be simple, the conversation light, the baby giggling nearby, but beneath it all, there was a new sense of security. Mark had drawn a line, and we could finally live without the shadow of Paula's anger looming over us. As I watched Lily and Mark move through the kitchen, I realized that protection wasn't just about stopping harm in the moment. It was about creating a safe space where love, respect, and boundaries could thrive. And for the first time, I felt like we had truly reached that place.